Good day, everybody. My name is Peter Okwoche. I'm a senior journalist with BBC World News here in London. Today, I'm talking to a very good friend of mine, a very old buddy indeed, Kanene Dieobi. I mean, a lot of you know him better as DJ Blox. And the reason why I've got him here today is to talk about the music sphere within this coronavirus pandemic. Now, all of us do understand that the coronavirus has actually disrupted life as we know it. What used to be normal no longer is. We're living in a new normal. But how has that affected music in general? We'll be talking to DJ Blox today to find out what people like him are doing in this sphere. And we're talking about the disruptors, specifically within Igbo music between 1972 and the year 2020. Hi, DJ Blox.
Hi, my man Peter. Always good to chat with you, man.
All right. It's always good to talk to you, bro. Now, disruptors are often seen as, people who come up and, mess up what used to be the norm. But because of coronavirus, we're now beginning to understand that this is not really the case. There are more people who are seizing an opportunity when something else comes to change what the new normal is, if you understand what I'm talking about.
Yep.
Why do people have this perception?
Oh, very, very good question. I would probably start first with introducing myself. Yeah, like you said, I'm Mr. Kanene Dieobi, a very good friend of Mr. Peter Okwoche, and we've known each other from like about our teens up till today. Graduate of civil engineering and computer science, master's degree in computer science, but probably better known for my moonlighting activities as DJ Blox. I founded DJB Music and the Party Day Here movement. So basically, we're the people that get you entertained, when you come to your events. And thank you, Peter. Going to your question, yes, disruptors. It's always been considered, people see these things in a negative way, as in, like, this thing is disrupting the norm, disrupting the comfort zone. But in actual fact, we've been experiencing lots of disruptions, and those are normally things that bring about change, but here we're looking at positive changes, ways that circumstances and conditions, people have been able to tap into it and make the best of that and birth new ways of doing things, and thereby creating opportunities for a lot more people who follow on, and new ideas, new ventures. So I'm one of those who half a glass full, so I always forever the optimist. So I always embrace things to do with change, for the better. So disruptors in this case, I'm one of the huge fans of disruptors, in this situation. And especially I'll be talking more about the Igbo scene, like you mentioned, within a timeline.
Indeed, DJ Blox. And you talk about these disruptions and people doing things differently. And normally on a daily basis, I'll be in the studio reading a news bulletin. But these days, I'm actually having to present some of my bulletins from home. What are some of the things that you, as a DJ, are doing now that you wouldn't have thought of doing maybe in December last year?
Very, very good question. We've seen where we are, things to do with movement and the rest. I'm probably my space in the DJ scene is more of a destination DJ. So I get to travel to places to play gigs for people, for private events and other. And we know how much we've been told to stay at home now, and movements totally like on a zero. You can only move from your bedroom to the bathroom and so on. So people like us, it affected our industry big time. And we've had to find innovative ways of doing things. And most especially now it's more about supporting your community, lifting spirits like, war times and all that. So it just gave me the idea to keep providing what I do best, to people via the social media, which is a very powerful tool. So been having lots of Instagram parties, Facebook live parties, and Zoom parties. Believe it or not, people are still celebrating somehow, So Zoom parties, the virtual environment. So it's taken a lot of adaptation, and I'm glad that at least we have, a way of still getting our music across.
Because coronavirus or not, party must stay here, right?
Yes, you got it.
Now, DJ Blox, I mean, I've attended a few of those parties as well, and to be honest, yes, you might be home alone or in front of your computer, but there's a sense of community at those events as well. But, let's not get it wrong. You have started this because of the coronavirus pandemic, but this has been going on for a while. Who are some of those people, especially musicians, especially within the Igbo music sphere, who you would say were trailblazers as disruptors?
Right. I mean, it's like I mentioned earlier, every time there's been change, there have been disruptors, because, change is all about disruption, disrupting the norm. So there have been key agents in that. And, just speaking about, why we got together, why we're presenting this, the Igbo space, the Igbo timeline through history, we've had, especially notably through the Civil War, post-Civil War, the music scene was more of an influence of what was going on during the Civil War, where people like James Brown's music, which is more like funk, was sort of like interfused with, the local sound, and kind of, putting out music that gave people hope, to see through the Nigerian Civil War as Igbos. And post-Civil War, that carried on up until, people started emerging who started creating new sounds. Most notably, there are quite a few people through the 70s, but not necessarily disruptors, but there were contributors like Celestine Ukwu, like Mike Ejeria, just people like that who kept up with that music of hope. But some few disruptors that actually stood out for me, especially growing up through those years, people like Mr. William Onyabo. Willie Onyabo, he was like late 70s into the 80s. I bet you remember that song, When the Going is Good Enough, and all that. That's William Onyabo. And his music, what really stood out and where I tend to see him more as a disruptor was that he came in to the music scene and he brought something totally new to the scene. His sound that was the first time that synthesizers kind of played a very strong role in music, that was being produced and put out to people of the East. And this was a new sound. He was creating sound with synthesizers and fusing it with the local kind of like vibes, and bringing in things to do with even the dance and video. And he was one of those the first musicians I can remember who actually were like the artists. They owned the recording studio, and they had the wax and printing studio as well to use the records. So more like an all-rounder. And I guess what that did for, that generation and moving on to, the current generation was show that you can be able to actually produce your own music, which is more like the trend now. You get a lot of current Afrobeats artists and the rest, you know, doing their own stuff, producing stuff from their bedrooms and the rest, you know, thankfully with, you know, the advent of computers and the rest of it. So William Onyeabor was one of those, you know, people I see as a very, very strong disruptor in the music scene and the lifestyle, because as well his music videos featured some sort of break dancing fused with the traditional Igbo dancing as well. So he brought in things to do with the dance element as well, brought in things to do with the, would I call it fashion in terms of, you know, the dressing. It was just a good fusion.
He was very flamboyant, wasn't he?
Very much so, yes, yes. His ideas were kind of like out of what the norm was, you know. I mean, he had a lot of influence from abroad anyway, but in many ways, he sort of like was one of those early people that took what the traditional sound was more like and turned it into something that was probably marketable and a lot more acceptable by the West generally. So one of those disruptors I have much respect for. Yeah. And
apart from him back in the 70s, there are people who have taken that tradition of disrupting the norm, you know, changing what we're used to, and they've brought it forward to this present age. I mean, you mentioned Afrobeats as well.
Yes, yes, that's right, that's right. I mean, through the years, I mean, the timeline, we had people like, worth mentioning, people like Dieobi, who came through those years of Dizike, Falola, Chris Okwoche, you know, the whole Felix Liberty, that whole setup that kind of lit the youth scene, you know, in Nigerian music. He came up with the Nigerian pop. There were the people that actually also lit the youth scene, got the young folks, you know, graduates, people in university like Chris Okwoche and Dieobi were good friends at the University of Nigeria, Enugu campus, Dieobi being a law student. So, you know, getting that space of people, you know, interested in also getting their music across. Their music was more of consciousness, you know, a bit of fun, but consciousness and the struggle that people were going through. But, you know, just moving further, you know, I'll come to artists, you know, some Afrobeats artists, notably someone like Flavor, Chinedu Okoli, Flavor, who came in on the scene. And what he's been able to do was to try, he took the Igbo culture again, and Igbo dance and music, and found a way with a group of other guys around him, found a way of putting that in the limelight to make it, you know, fashionable and relevant, you know, and come up with, you know, different songs, you know, that actually are true Enugu sort of like roots songs and dances. Like you hear songs like Ogene, you hear, you know, Ogene with Zoro, and then you hear the other collaboration with Umu Bilibo. You know, these are songs that normally our dads would be listening to, but now it's been brought to the forefront that, you know, all over the world, in the US, in the UK, everywhere, people are jiving to this and actually dancing, trying to learn those dances. And, you know, it's something, you know, so I see Flavor as a very huge disruptor, you know, in terms of, you know, the artist. So he's another one I see as a disruptor. And I don't know, I think one person that's probably worthy of note as well is Mastercraft. Mastercraft is more of a producer than an artist. And he's one of those guys, I mean, most of the major hits you hear, you know, out of Afrobeats, you would probably hear, you know, Mastercraft, you know, on it as well. And he's been able to actually, I remember, I think about 2 years ago, like 2018, I know he went on a project where he was recording sounds, natural sounds, and, you know, like you get two rocks and knock together and record the sound, and recording these sounds to actually take them in to, you know, electronic form and be able to infuse it in, you know, their production packets. So this is, I mean, this is a core disruptor, because you know, what he's managed to come out with is a sound that wasn't in the past captured in an electronic way and used in that way. So it's one of the people I also think they're worthy of mention as well. You know, so Mastercraft, I would also term as a disruptor.
So is it fair then to say that a disruptor is actually someone who seizes a moment, realizes that, okay, what we regard as normal might no longer be possible, and I will have to start developing new ways to create a new normal? Is it fair to look at a disruptor like that rather than somebody who comes and just messes things up?
I think you've captured it pretty very well. I mean, from, like I said, from an optimist's perspective, and not just an optimist, you know, from especially the outcome of that disruption is something positive. I mean, like that, the word disruptor has always been mostly used in the negative sense. So it's mostly, you know, it's attached with, like you mentioned, either destruction or messing something up, you know. But we know that to create something new, you probably have to tweak or meddle or sort of destroy, you know, some bits of the old. And so disruptors in that way, you know, are here to stay. And actually, it's good that they're being recognized, because, you know, that's the way that any industry and human beings as well, you know, would be able to keep evolving. You know, we need more disruptors for the good. And so, yes, you're right. The way you've captured what I would describe as a disruptor, you know, that's perfectly right.
And just to put this into some kind of perspective, DJ Blox, I mean, even while I was doing a little bit of research before this talk of ours, I realized that even big record companies like Virgin Records are actually now having discussions, just as you and I are having now, about disruptors and what they can do, how they can create a new normal from whatever chaos that they are living in right now. And you know, you mentioned some of those parties that you've had. I attended a party recently that was organized from Canada. There were people from the United States, people from Nigeria, people from all over the world. What's one of the most disruptive things that you have done recently, whether with your music or somewhere else?
Right. Very interesting. You know, like I said, you know, I'm one who I embrace that concept of disruption, especially for the good. And a very good, probably a good example I can give you of what I've been doing. You know, yes, I'm involved in the moment that I probably will class as a disruption. Because when we started all these online gigs, you know, like the virtual gigs and Instagram and the rest, one of the things that quickly became clear was that the platforms weren't actually built for the purpose of DJs streaming their music live, you know, via Instagram or Facebook. So one of the things that suffered the most was the sound fidelity. So most times when you listen to these Instagram gigs and the rest, you would actually, I mean, many people tend to switch up a lot of times because it just sounds like one hollow room and music is playing, and you know, you're not getting that same feel of if you were there. So very quickly I picked up on that, and I was thinking of how could this be improved on. And thankfully, somewhere, you know, chance has a way of getting people together. I managed to meet this young man who runs an electronics company, and I was discussing this with him, and he told me that he was also thinking along those lines. So we both joined up, And we've developed a prototype which allows you to use your phone as the interface to stream your gig and still maintain the sound fidelity. We've tested this product. I currently use it. It's in its prototype, and it's about to go into production. So getting such a product out that allows DJs very easily and not for so much money, be able to plug in something made for the DJ, to support what they're doing. So that excites me. I would class that as a disruption, because it's no longer the norm to just put your speakers up and face the phone on it and just blast the music, and all sorts of, poor quality sound comes through. So you're able to do something different. So yeah, so I'm excited. So probably that's my claim to, that disruptor badge.
Yeah, but in all honesty, DJ Blox, you and I, we talk fairly regularly. And, when people talk about DJs, obviously the DJ is the person who creates a feel-good vibe when you go to a party or you go to a nightclub, or the person you go and meet to and say, can you make some mixes for me to play at my own leisure? But you have also started something very interesting. A conversation you and I had a couple of weeks ago, and you were telling me about how you were using DJing to create an awareness about the coronavirus, and you're actually working with a health group. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because for me, it was the first time I was hearing that.
Oh, that's cool. Okay, cool. Yeah, it's amazing what kind of like things like events like pandemics and all these life-changing events. What they can cost to one. Basically, like I mentioned, going through a pandemic, with lots of losses of lives and uncertainty and so many things going on. What comes to mind is, people are kind of like, they're looking for something to hold on to, to keep the hope alive, and, something to just keep them in a positive place, because so much negative news going on. I mean, we're very much aware that things are not really great, but, we understand equally about the mental awareness aspect, your mental health awareness. And when I started the Instagram live gig, I started it on the basis of trying to, keep community in a positive place, because I know the power of music and what it can do in terms of, sort of like our mental health. So that's how I started playing. And I was approached by a medical healthcare company who had seen a couple of my gigs, and they mentioned about their interest and how they were so happy with what I was doing with regards to mental health awareness. And the company's Outpost Healthcare, just a group of medical doctors who kind of like, like doctors from overseas kind of thing, focused on Africa, particularly Nigeria, Ghana, the West Coast, basically. And they just shared their vision with me, and they asked if it was possible for us to do some collaboration together, where they would offer free medical advice, and support for people through this period. And on the other hand, my platform where I play these live gigs will be a way of their outreach, to get to the grassroots. So it was a perfect, marriage made in heaven, put it that way. And on the other hand, they brought me in on their advisory board, which was quite an honor as well. So we're currently still working together every Saturday. We use that platform as an outreach form, play some good music, they connect with people, they offer their app, free download of their app. So it's something that I'm pretty happy about. And, these circumstances, you find opportunities as well to, to serve and to give back to the community.
Absolutely, and these opportunities actually can come from outside your area of specialization. And I have seen some of the work you guys have been doing, and it's actually very brilliant work. Just before we round up, DJ Blox, what advice would you have for an up and coming DJ or somebody in a different sphere, in a different field, who wants to be a disruptor?
Yeah, I think, like I said from the onset, it's something to embrace. Forever the optimist in me. I think in the midst of every storm, there's always something good that will come out of it. So wherever we find ourselves, and I'm talking generally here, I'm just speaking generally, wherever we find ourselves in the middle of a pandemic and stuff, it might be time to reflect, and probably get your head in order, and think things through again, things you've been doing in a particular way, ways you could probably do things better, and, just pick up inspiration from around you. And I think quiet times are probably the most creative times. So I would advise, the young, or not just generally the young ones, anyone who actually feels like they want to be a game changer, or a change agent, always be bold about, taking a step to try something, to do something in a different way, but with the mindset of improving it. And if you make mistakes, so be it, but just you have to give it a go. So most things that we see around us, most inventions, they didn't come out of just a first chance attempt, so failure is not really what, we call failure. Is when you stop attempting to get things better, that's when you failed. But if something hasn't worked the first time, you keep trying. So that would be my general advice. So disruptors, disruptions, embrace with all hands. And yeah, that's what I would say.
DJ Blox, DJ, disruptor, now health advocate. Always great talking to you, sir. Thank you very much, man.
Thank you, Mr. Peter. All the best. I'm looking forward to seeing you on Saturday again. Yeah, so make sure you.
I'll be there. Party day here. Party day.
Yes, sir. All right. Thank you very much.
Yes, man.
God bless.